Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. We know the sign of champions is playing badly but winning, but surely playing well and winning counts too. Arsenal blow Aston Villa away in the second half at the Emirates. How many people have said statement victory? Have they made it a two-horse race? Arsenal 4, Aston Villa 1. With apologies, Dan. This is a massive win for Arsenal, and one of those. Yeah, we look really good. I thought for the first 20 minutes, I thought, oh, Villa have got a chance here. And then the second half, it looked like a real gulf between the two sides.
Yeah, I'll try and put my neutral hat on to answer.
Please
I thought Villa were good in the first half. I thought the game plan was executed pretty well, and then with a bit of a better decision making in the final third, overhitting passes and the final shot getting away. Villa were quite unlucky not to be ahead, maybe shaded it, maybe had the better of that first half, but in the second half Arsenal just smelt blood and took full advantage. As soon as they went 1-0 up, they just completely went at Villa. It's a typical Arsenal kind of set piece goal, isn't it, to get them on their way. It's such a good trait to have when a game's close, to be able to be so dominant and be so dangerous from set pieces, albeit I think it was pretty poor from Emi Martinez. That's kind of the third away game in kind of a couple of months where he's looked pretty weak from set pieces. But Arsenal get the goal, and from then on it was complete one-way traffic. That they just dominated. They could have had more, in all honesty, and like you said at the top end of the show, it was a statement victory. And Man City have got a tough game away at Sunderland. It felt like a massive win for us. So you could see after the game Arteta, the massive smile on his face when he was being interviewed, the way the fans reacted. It's a big win because Villa were up there. Villa were on a stupendous run, and Arsenal have completely ripped that to pieces. So from an Arsenal perspective, absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic result. From a Villa perspective, I don't think Villa fans should dwell on it too long because it's been a sensational run, winning 11 games in a row. It was always going to come to an end at some point. Arsenal away is probably as likely a place for it to come to an end as any, and back them to go again on Saturday against Forest and start another run. All's not lost. We're still in a really, really good position. I managed to go nearly the whole spiel there without saying we, and then I failed right at the end.
That's okay. Look, I will get you to dwell on the defeat in a little while, but let's focus on Arsenal for a bit. And look, a lot, Paul, has talked about set pieces, and rightly so, and a little bit of but you never score from open play, and then that Odegaard pass to Zubamendi, that finish is just so heavenly, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those passes where you can't see it enough times. It's just a beautiful, beautiful pass. You couldn't place it better. It was an amazing goal. And it's funny because once Arsenal, I say, like, Villa looked great first half. They genuinely looked every bit as good as Arsenal. But as soon as Arsenal were ahead, it just felt like this waves of momentum. It just seemed like they could score like pretty much every time they came forward. And I think a lot will go back to that Emi Martinez era, really. He was too busy fighting the players around him, forgot there was a corner coming over. And I think before that, it genuinely felt like this could go either way, and it just totally tipped the balance. It was just absolutely relentless after that, really.
Yeah. I just, on that Zubamendi goal, and if anyone has an answer to this, it's amazing. But I did think, how many goals in the Premier League have been assisted and scored by a Martin? And I was like, that seems pretty rare to have Martin to Martin scoring a goal. I should get in touch with the knowledge, shouldn't I? Well, on that set piece, actually, Will, Match Today broke it down quite well. I think it was Rob Green saying Aston Villa needed to have somebody in between Gabriel and Martinez. And it's not like we haven't been warned for what feels like a decade now, but like for a long time, that Gabriel, God, so annoying to be the person who has to be him, just leaning into you and leaning out. I'd just be like, I just can't be bothered. But I'm not a professional footballer. Villa needed to have someone there to stop that happening.
There's a set pieces coach role going at Anfield, Max, if you're up for it.
Okay.
After getting rid of theirs. But I mean, I think obviously Arsenal are excellent at set pieces and planned very well. It's slightly problematic for Villa where everyone knows now that you can wind up Martinez and get in his face, and that probably they should know that as well. And as you say, Green points out that you need someone in between, you need someone not to leave it to Martinez. His job is bigger than wrestling Gabriel. And that's it. once teams at this level know you've got a weakness, they'll target it, and especially when it's their own strength. If they can add an extra 5% when it is getting in the face of someone like Martinez, he's supposed to be a world number one goalkeeper. He should have learned from his mistakes with these things getting involved. You got to protect your goalkeeper. Goalkeepers, really do hate defending set pieces. You speak to any of them, they need clear lines. They need space to get to the ball. And if you've got someone right in front of you, you're never going to do it. And that's it's a simple matter of fact. And you've got to be a bit smarter with these things, and what's coming with Arsenal, and you've got to analyse it to the minutiae of it all. And I think Villa and Martinez have probably let themselves down on that. And you say football is a matter of moments, and that's turned that game because it set Arsenal on the way to victory. And as everyone else said, once that goal goes in, it was all Arsenal. Probably a little bit of the mentality had gone from Villa, a bit concerned by what was coming, and you've got to know that those small details matter, and probably Villa have just let themselves down on that one a little bit.
I considered it was Austin McPhee versus Nicholas Yova. That was the real battle, and surely McPhee's got to be he's touted as one of the best. He's got to know better than that. I did think, look, the finishes from Trossard and Jesus are both lovely, and I thought Trossard, who is a sort of criminally underrated footballer, I'm not sure why, but I thought he had a brilliant game, not just a brilliant finish.
Yeah, I think that's his third or fourth game in a row where he scored against Villa. And to be honest, whenever you watch him play, he tends to score against everyone. He was a bit of a forgotten man at the start of the season. You looked at all the business Arsenal had done in the summer and you did wonder where he would fit in. And I think there was a few murmurs that perhaps they'd look to sell him. I don't know how true that ever was, but he's made himself such a crucial player for them. And if you think back to that 2-3 Januaries ago when they got him in, he's been a real smart signing for them. He's scored a lot of crucial goals. He's actually a really, really intelligent footballer. And when Arsenal kind of need something, to coin an American term, which I hate doing, he does seem to be that clutch player. And he's just an all-round game. He scores lots of types of different goals as well. That was a lovely goal last night. Not much Martinez could do about that one, and that's completely killed the game. Although I do think there was a moment at 2-0 where the game may have turned the other way had the referee been a bit braver.
Just when you said I hate using this American term, I was really hoping you were going to say rootin' tootin' or something like that. But I know what you mean about clutch. And Trossard is he the best grey-haired footballer in the Premier League? I can't think of many others. Glenn Hussein, clearly, famously, but I don't think I'm not sure he's still playing. And they did it with that Declan Rice, Paul, because I think when it was like, oh, he's injured, and you were like, okay, I really thought Villa had a chance. It was really interesting to see how Arsenal would get on with that Rice, who is sort of considered the heartbeat of the team. And then in that wave after wave second half, they definitely had something pushing the blood around the team.
Yeah, they didn't appear shorn of Declan Rice, which is an amazing statement to make given how good he's been. I think it almost said it all when Gabriel Jesus just came back from being away with cruciate injury for so long, comes back, scores with his first touch, and you can almost imagine other managers going, oh shit, he's back now as well. It's like you don't notice who's missing because they are just so good at the moment. I've got to say they look pretty ominous, don't they, Arsenal? If you're trying to stop them, and you never want to say this about Arsenal because of the history, but
yeah,
it is at the moment it is sort of hard to see where
City are going well, right?
Is.
That's the interesting thing is that Arsenal have been in this kind of blip where they're winning, apart from that Villa game, and City have been winning reasonably well.
Yeah,
and what we want is them both to be going toe to toe till the end, right? I guess.
Yeah, and I suppose you could also look at this and say, Villa had 2 or 3 amazing chances in the first half. All of those, or any 1 or 2 of those, could have gone in. Maybe you'd be looking at a slightly different game. But no, the way Arsenal look, I think it's almost a real testament to the strength in depth that you can have Rice out and you kind of don't notice. At least second half, you kind of don't notice because they're just so good at going through their strides.
Yeah, sorry, Dave, you mentioned that should Mourinho have been sent off, and I think most people think he should. And it is a sort of weird quirk of VAR. It's a bit like that when it's so obviously not a corner to a team and it could be decided like that they can't interfere with second yellows. And you just feel like if we've got this thing, which I don't want, we might as well use it for those as well.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of bravery from the referee, and the kind of cynic in me thinks back to Manchester City a few days ago against Forest, a similar incident, another team that's going for the title where it doesn't get given. And then they were mentioning this high bar for second yellows, which I must admit I've never heard of until last night. I don't know whether anyone can enlighten me whether that's a real thing or not, but they mentioned that there's a higher bar now for second yellows, but a yellow card is a yellow card. Yeah, for me, Mourinho has pulled Rodgers back. It's not fleeting or any of the other weird analogies that the PGMOL have used before. He has pulled him back whilst he's on a yellow card and he's heading towards goal. So in any country, in any league, in any competition, for me, that's a yellow card. I'm not sure what this second yellow high bar is. It sounds nonsense.
Victor Gyökeres, Will, he doesn't need me to curse him in the way that I cursed Timo Werner, but I think he's going to come good. Like he hasn't scored with any of his last 23 shots in the Premier League, excluding penalties. He had 5 touches in the first half, didn't complete a single pass. This doesn't sound good. So, like he could do with scoring a goal, obviously, but I don't know. I think he does add, even though those statistics seem to suggest he does absolutely bugger all, I reckon he adds something to them. And I think once one goes in off his arse or whatever, it's not an inconsiderable arse. I reckon he will come good. I think he is worth persevering with. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the life of a striker, isn't it? I mean, no one in the modern game generally spends that much money on a player that they then think, oh, actually, maybe he was better suited at Coventry or whatever. And you look at the example of Calvert-Lewin at the start of the season, absolutely awful, really. Getting in positions, which cliche, but a good sign.
Sure.
And that's the same. And now he's on a run of six games, scoring in each one, I think it is. And that's the nature of being a striker, unfortunately. You always go back to the confidence player thing. He's big, he's physical, he's quick. You've got those attributes, and he's scored goals in the past, and that's what will happen. I mean, obviously he's got problems that Jesus is back now, and quite an arrogant chap with his new merch that says "I belong to Jesus." Can't wait for that to be in the Arsenal club shop. But that's the confidence you've got to have as a striker.
He is the guy that needs a caveat on that T-shirt, isn't it? Going, I don't. By the way, I mean Jesus, not me. But you get the point. Yeah. But that's just a slightly less pithy. Yeah.
In brackets, not Gabriel, but not the centre back Gabriel. Me. Yeah. But that's who I belong to. Yeah. Just to be clear.
Yeah. But I am Gabriel Jesus. If you weren't sure, you really need a smaller font, I guess. I've forgotten what point you were making now. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Big Fickle. Big Fickle score some goals at some point because Arsenal create chances, as we've seen. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. And they'll win the title by April the 5th? Yeah, sorted.
And actually on strikers, Dan, and I don't know what you think about this with Ollie Watkins, because he had quite an interesting season where he didn't score for ages and started scoring. And that chance he had, and it's probably unfair to compare a normal centre-forward to Harry Kane, but occasionally you see Watkins snatching at a chance or trying to power something that he could place. And just in that moment is when you see the slight difference between elite and really good, which is what he is.
Up until the last few weeks, hasn't really been contributing anything goals or assists-wise. He's carrying this injury that we all know about, but that's a huge chance, and he's had some really good days at the Emirates. And that, I suppose that's the slightly frustrating thing for Villa fans last night, is that the game plan actually looked quite good in the first half, and they undid that within 10 wild minutes at the start of the second half. And you haven't asked me this, but I do think there's a few caveats to Villa losing that game. People talk about Arsenal not having Declan Rice. Villa had loads of players missing last night. Boubacar Kamara being suspended in midfield was critical. And then to lose Onana, who I think at that point, maybe when he was there in the first half, Arsenal were maybe missing Declan Rice. Him going off because he was causing them problems driving forward, and to lose him from that point of view, and then also lose him as he's kind of the big present spare man from a set piece point of view as well. They didn't cause Villa too many problems from corners in the first half, yet the first one they faced without Onana, they've conceded. So I do think there's a few caveats to that defeat for Villa, but it won't define the season. We're still having an unbelievable season to be third and like 9 points clear of teams like Chelsea at this stage of the season is massive, because ultimately, for all the talk of title race, the ambition for Villa will be to get back in the Champions League.
And look, the other games are on Thursday night. So Man City's trip to Sunderland. We're going to do a pod on Friday to round up those 4 Thursday night games. Don't know why there are none tonight, but anyway, that's what's happening. Chelsea 2, Bournemouth 2. You had this on your main screen, Dan. I mean, absolutely ridiculous sort of first half hour where it did look like, especially Bournemouth, were just scything through Chelsea. I sort of almost thought Chelsea were pretty lucky for it to be 2-2 at that time.
Yeah, I watched the first half before I put the Villa game on, and in all honesty, at half time it could have been 10-10. Both teams coming forward, both teams looked hopeless. Defensively, Bournemouth have got this weird thing at the moment whenever I see them where their intensity going in one direction is absolutely top draw, but then defensively they don't seem to be able to maintain that intensity and letting in poor goals, especially away from home week after week. Chelsea are just a weird watch. They can look like two different teams in one game. They're quite capable of having a good half and then dropping an absolute stinker in the second, or vice versa. But Bournemouth started that game, I thought, like a team that felt like they had some making up to do to their fans, because they obviously had a bad Christmas game away at Brentford, was it, where they got heavily beaten, and they looked like they meant business in that first half, but they just couldn't defend, which meant that the game stayed level. And then the second half, from what I saw on the highlights, just looked like a bit of a non-event compared to the raucous and rampant first half.
Yeah, 2 goals from long throws for Bournemouth. It looked like Garnacho was at fault for both. He's probably not the guy you want to be your last line of defence at any time, I'd suspect. And look, both long throws from Semenyo, Paul. And that is the big story. He did a big, applauding the fans at the end. I know Iraola said, "Oh no, he's our player." I mean, part of me is looking forward to him lobbing them in for Man City, which looks like where he's going to go. But it will be a massive loss to Bournemouth. He's been so brilliant for them.
Yeah, and on one hand, see, I'm torn in two here. On one hand, it would be quite sad to see that. No one wants to see Man City just buy up every single talented footballer. The fact he's doing this job for Bournemouth, it's brilliant to have a league where you can have players like that at Bournemouth and just being brilliant. It's quite depressing to think of him being signed up by Man City. The other side of me, on the other hand, is a Bristol City fan, and we have a sell-on clause. So I'd like him to go for 400 million, which would sustain our losses for another season or two. Because
he played for City for a long time, didn't he? Did you, when you watched him there, maybe we've talked about this before, I can't remember, was he a slow burn, or was he instantly this guy is going to do something special?
He was very good, but you never thought he'd be this good. It always felt like he didn't quite have the consistency to play. I thought he'd be in the Premier League, but I didn't think he'd be the sought after property in the Premier League. That's definitely been a really fast process. And yeah, and I think on the whole, it is quite sad, I think, seeing a player like this going to Man City. I think it speaks to a system that's broken when you just have talent like that being just snapped up and it's routinely happening. But yeah, I love Chelsea Bournemouth as well. What a game that was. Those first half hours, just magic. The thing that really stuck with me though is just, I know it's been spoken about an awful lot, but how bad Chelsea are at defending, especially at set pieces sometimes, that you just, the Kluivert goal, Chelsea just flick it on for him. It's bizarre seeing a team of Chelsea's talent just so consistently unpicked by what are relatively simple things, really.
Yeah, and actually sort of Sanchez dives like the goalkeeper used to dive in Match Day 2 on the BBC Micro, just sort of flat out, boom, just sort of flat in front of him and then pinged back. But perhaps not entirely his fault. I don't know. Interesting to see if Semenyo does go to City, Will. Quite interesting, given that Doku's been playing really well on that side. Okay, you need lots of good players. You need a deep squad. He may not go. He may go to Liverpool. Who knows, right? Everybody wants him.
Yeah, I mean, he will go to Manchester City. He prefers City as an option.
Okay.
I think other teams have offered more money wage-wise, but the ideal, I've been told, is to work with Guardiola and go to City, and I think that's where he fits in better. They don't have a long throw expert, so that'd be important for him. But yeah, I think having Semenyo just gives you greater options. Doku can then have the option of playing right and left. There's been a lot more rotation in those sort of three positions behind Haaland this season. And so to have Semenyo, who can say left, right, again, could be down the middle. this sort of desire for more physical players. Guardiola's spoken about it before. I think probably people like Oscar Bob now have fallen away a little bit, struggling to cope with what Guardiola wants, and hasn't been great this season. Obviously a difficult time injury, and I think going forward, this is the type of player that is desired in the squad, as I said, and Guardiola wants him, and he will make a big difference. And I think if you look, and we talk about sort of little differences, City, scaring people with Doku and Cherki and Foden and all that, and then to think, oh, they can lob in a throw now with Haaland on the end of it. It will give an extra dynamic for people to think about, and that's if Arsenal do it, we talk about Arsenal doing it so well, and that changed the match last night. If City have an extra option of an attacking threat because they don't have anyone that can, reach the edge of the box from a throw-in at the moment, it'll be fascinating to see the dynamic. And City have lots of players that can make the difference from those sort of events. So no, I think it's sort of the natural position of the Premier League over years that the best players at other clubs get snapped up by the top six, and this is the case of it. And fair play to Semenyo. Fair play to Bournemouth's recruitment that they're going to make another massive profit, as will Bristol City. Problem for Bournemouth is replacing it in the summer is obviously preferable, but when you've got a release clause, you got to go and work out what you do. I'm sure they'll have someone lined up, but a lot of the time when it's Bournemouth, you say, oh, they've signed a really good player, but he's going to take 6 months to settle and learn about the Premier League. And considering the form Bournemouth are going on at the moment, that's probably where the irritation is for Iraola. It's their business model, so you can't really complain. We talk about their defence being struggling. They lost, 4 of their back 5 over the summer, and it's taking time to bed in, and that's unfortunately what they've gone for. And 65 million quid release clause is there, then he's going to go, and City will be the benefits of the schooling that Bournemouth have given him in the Premier League.
Would 2011 Pep think that in 15 years he'd have someone hurling? Maybe Semenyo won't do long throws for City. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, worth mentioning Enzo's finish was really lovely. That feint was really lovely and a great finish too. But we talked a lot about Chelsea being odd on Monday, and they remain odd. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So West Ham 2, Brighton 2. This match was so fun. Match of the Day led with it, mainly because they didn't have the manager interviews ready from the Aston Villa game. 3 penalties in the first half. The second game in Premier League history where that's happened, after Fulham Bolton in August 2002. Well, we should have got who scored the penalties for Fulham Bolton in 2002. Joel, can you be bothered to find those? Fulham Bolton in 2002. What are your guesses? Clint Dempsey.
Kevin Davis.
Yeah, I'd have gone
Kevin
Davis.
Davis.
Yeah, Kevin Davis.
And Bobby Zamora. Do you reckon it was Zamora? Different penalties for Fulham. It was Fulham 4, Bolton Wanderers 1. And the penalties were Michael Ricketts for Bolton, Louis Saha equalising, and then Steve Marley making it 3-1 to
I'd have never got
There we
that.
go. No, we would have been here a long time. Anyway, let's talk about Danny Welbeck's missed Panenka, Paul, because I like a scored Panenka, but I love a missed Panenka.
I do. And the fact he'd already scored a penalty, I don't know if that makes it better or worse. In a way, it makes it better. But what made him think? It's almost like it made it more of a showboaty thing to then do a Panenka with this one. I have to say, it wasn't that bad as bad Panenkas go. At least he's hit the bar. It wasn't.
Sure. I
one of
mean,
those
there is
horror
one
shows.
major detail about how it was bad, isn't there? If we're being
What,
harsh.
the air
Well, it
shot
didn't go in.
afterwards, or
It didn't go
oh yeah,
in.
that, and also the slightly embarrassing when it rebounds to him. Obviously, he's totally not expecting it. He's off balance, so he takes this ungainly kind of air shot hack attempt. You lose all the cool of a Panenka when it comes back to you off a rebound, and you have to have a sort of fly hack at it and miss it.
And you're not even allowed to kick it. I mean, it's a double. That's not
that's a good
yours.
point.
Yeah.
Maybe it
meant
was a
to let
really
it go.
ingenious attempt to dummy it. But what was amazing though was then there's kind of like a sort of start of a fight between the players, because and what it seems to be is that the West Ham players are so affronted at the Panenka attempt that they kind of get in his face and that a fight starts. But I don't know, in a way it's like, I don't quite understand why you'd be so angry at him. The opposition players missed a penalty. He's obviously, I just feel like you'd be delighted, but they seem angry at the fact he's Panenka'd it. And I wonder if that's because he's already scored a penalty. It felt like, all right, no need to to sort of take the second one like that. I don't
Yes.
know.
Do you think if West Ham players feel they're disrespected, and surely Danny Welbeck could turn around and go, guys, you're just West Ham. Like you can't be disrespected at this current level that you're playing. I mean, it was actually, Dan, quite a pivotal moment in the game, really. Like if he scores that, you think West Ham are unlikely to get back into it.
Yeah, especially at home. I know they've picked up ever so slightly at home since Nuno's gone in, but when they go behind, that place can, I imagine, feel like a pretty difficult place to try and turn a game around, because that fan base, and rightly so, is just dismayed with what's going on at their football club at the moment. They're crying out for a proper midfielder. West Ham, I'd be shocked if they didn't try and get a proper central midfielder in January. But yeah, if they go behind, it becomes a very difficult game, I think, for West Ham. They just seem to be trying to draw their way to safety at the moment, but I'm not sure that that's going to work. Every time I look at
Wolves, aren't they? So
yeah, I mean, we'll come on to that. I did quite enjoy that result last night, actually, due to having Manchester United friends. But I think West Ham, they need wins, don't they? And at the moment, the wins don't look like they're going to come. There was some weird rumours about Nuno over Christmas that they're looking at dispatching him and getting a new manager in. I'd suggest he's probably pretty well placed to try and keep them up, but it's a difficult situation here. I just don't think they've got enough about them. They've got players from what it seems too many different regimes in there now. They look like they've been cobbled together. I can't see them staying up personally, but they need to start winning some games, and especially at home.
Yeah, actually, I mean, look, they're only 4 points off Forest, but it feels like an enormous January, Will, for West Ham, and you wouldn't trust anyone like within miles of the London Stadium with recruitment. With getting things right this January.
No, I mean, their recruitment over recent years has been some of the worst. As Dan said, it's random sort of collections of players put together. Fulkrug, who turned up as the new number 9, not wanted. If Jared Bowen got injured, I mean, you've got to be fearful of what would happen. But yeah, they can't control the midfield. We've got Potts in there, who's young lad that's come in under Nuno. Magassa's just getting used to the Premier League. Last night was just nothing to be able to do to concern Brighton, who've got plenty of quality in there. There's not much off the bench. Callum Wilson starting, signed on a free transfer from Newcastle in the summer because there's just no one else available. I mean, who's going to go there? That's the other question now. It doesn't seem particularly enticing as a prospect. I guess in the teams in the relegation battle, say 4 points off, not too far behind. They've got Wolves at the weekend, which is a massive one.
Yeah, they've got Wolves and then Forest, which is it's an enormous few days, isn't it?
Nuno seems to have changed it a bit. They're not as bad as they were at the start of the season, but the goalkeeper's looking very weak. He was poor last night. The centre backs, rumours are trying to offload Kilman, who they spent 40 million quid on, trying to send him back to Wolves as part of the potential Strand Larsen deal. I mean, I can't really name which transfers come off at West Ham in recent years.
No, I think you're right.
Mean, when did Bowen sign?
Yeah, well, but that's the point about Bowen, Dan, is if you're Jared Bowen, at some point you've got to think, I can't just be dragging this enormous cart horse for my whole life. Go somewhere good, go somewhere good and see what it'd be fascinating to see. And West Ham fans won't like hearing it, but they even must know. It'd be great to see him in a. We were complaining about Semenyo going to a top side, but it'd be great to see him playing with some good players and just see how good he could be. Yeah,
I think at this point, West Ham fans would almost understand. If he left, they'd obviously be devastated because he's a club icon, given some of the big moments he's had in a West Ham shirt. But he literally carries them, doesn't he? You always fancy West Ham to score in games because Jared Bowen is playing for them, but you look at the rest of that team and you always fancy them to concede a few as well. And inevitably, Bowen does score in most games, but they also concede two plus most weeks. And that's even with Nuno coming in, who's a pretty defensively sound manager. Bowen's harming himself and harming his career at this point, because you would suggest that being at West Ham doesn't do him any favours in terms of his England chances and going to the World Cup. He obviously won't leave in January because he genuinely has an affection for the club and he'll want to keep them up. But you're right that at some point he must look at it and think, it would be nice to to play somewhere different, somewhere where I
And he's
might have
29,
a bit of
right? He's
help.
29.
Yeah.
Yeah, like not that young. Look, I enjoyed Paquetá's foul for the penalty. Like, as Roby tackles goal, I thought that was really good. Hertzler was upset with the penalty. And even I think it is a handball, and I don't like handballs. He says no one has clear footage of it. I can't understand how you can make a decision. That's not possible in the best league of the world. I think there was clear footage.
The footage I saw was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabian,
they were going through the
footage.
stand to see if anyone filmed it on their phones, right?
Exactly, yeah. But
did
everybody
film
filming on their phone was at Fratton Park, of course, which we'll get to. And nice to hear Michael Salisbury. I need to do this, and I haven't done it yet, of a radio quiz of playing all the referees, and can you guess who they are? Because they all sound identical. They're all from the same town in Yorkshire. And it's just sensational. Just this pot of PGMOL only getting northern refs. Let's go to Old Trafford. Jed says, I've watched some absolute drivel in my time as a United fan, some world-class shite, but I've never witnessed 11 players so devoid of everything. At least Ole Ball was exciting. Wolves, more than worth their point. I have complete confession to make now that I watched all the highlights, at least I thought I did, but I don't, unless it was so boring I can't remember it. I may confess I didn't see the highlights of this game. So, Paul, do me a favour, talk me through what happened.
Well, it was a bizarre football match, I've got to say. So, I mean, it's bizarre only in as much as it's weirdly predictable. But for Man U to go ahead, so Xerxes scores, which doesn't really happen. It's basically his farewell goal, you'd imagine. He's off in the transfer window. It's definitely not worked for him. He scored, but it did take an enormous deflection, like a huge deflection from Krejci, who's really unlucky. Krejci then becomes the hero for Wolves when he scores with a header. But the header that Wolves score, I mean, it's a lovely header from his perspective, but the lack of defending being done on that header for him to score after he's about 8 yards out, it's a flick on from a corner and just there's no one around. He just pops up to score. But the bizarre thing with this game, I suppose there's two really telling things, is that Man U having gone a goal ahead against a team that are so devoid of self-confidence of anything really, and to not go on to win that game is a phenomenal achievement really, because you go a goal up against Wolves, you have a couple of chances, you kind of think this one's got to be put to bed, but they just didn't, and Wolves genuinely could have won it. I think the closest thing Man U had to winning it was actually from Wolves. It was nearly a bizarre own goal from Mosquera. Incredible save actually, this from Sarr. Like, it's one of those kind of grasps it back from the line from Mosquera's header. But yeah, I mean, you could argue that either side could have nicked it, but really Wolves I'd say probably were the better team, which is not a sentence we've heard an awful lot this season, is it? Really?
No, and their first point under Rob Edwards. So could it be the turning point? Quite literally. Also, the interesting thing, Will, is despite Manchester United being sort of generally terrible, they are sixth. They are 2 points off fourth, and Liverpool are fourth with 32 points. And you see their form, and you sort of think anyone down to maybe even Bournemouth with 23 points has a good run, like really puts it together. It is almost impossible to say who will come fourth in the Premier. Like fourth and fifth Champions League spots, most likely fifth is Champions League spot, are absolutely impossible to call.
Yeah, but that's relying on one of those teams actually going on a good, steady
run.
run.
Of course,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
That the problem is created because they're all so inconsistent. I mean, you look at United last night against Wolves. Obviously they played each other less than a month ago, and Wolves were, I'd argue, the worst Premier League team I'd ever seen at that point. Last night, they were actually come together, competent, decent before the goal, decent after the goal. Didn't fall apart. Let's be honest, that team is pretty weak on paper, but is showing signs of being a bit more of a unit and in Edwards' mould. But I think for United, they say purely inconsistent. Xerxes, will be gone. He's having to start. I mean, if he's not going to, if this is a long-term project, what's the point in starting him when he's going to be gone in a few weeks? And that's the aim. He's pretty open about it. He doesn't seem to want to be there. And if he scored a goal, admittedly from a deflection, and should be quite confident going into the second half. But no, you get off. We're going to bring on one of the kids. it's bizarre. And he changed him in the defence again, and the big difference between probably, the previous game at Molineux and this was no Fernandes. And without Fernandes, they just look rudderless. He's the man that can create fluidity within the team. And there's none of that last night with Ugarte and Casemiro in midfield. Cunyon, nowhere near his best. Xerxes and Sesko. I mean, Sesko, 2 goals in 17, I think it is. I mean, I try not to judge the striker too early on, but he doesn't look confident. He doesn't look like he's going to do the business that United really need from a £70-odd million striker. 13 months into Amorim, and I just can't tell you what United are still. I don't know. And the only upside I would say for United at the moment is that Amorim's finally worked out there is an academy beneath him with some really good players, and they're getting chances. And it's, I think in this January window, he's got to decide if people like Xerxes aren't here for the long term, and he's got to hold his hands like, look, we're 6, we've got chances, but if we're going to push on for the next 18 months, I've got to give more chances to Fletcher, Shea Lacey, Mandito, and all people like that, because at the moment, he shouldn't be drawing 1-1 against one, arguably the worst team in Premier League history at home. And that's it. And they didn't look like winning, really. And that's the problem. Look, if you have 10 shots and their keepers as a Storm are fine, hold your hands up, but just slow, monotonous football. I appreciate there's a few injuries in Afcon, but not good enough again.
Cunha probably looks at it and thinks, I should have started at Wolves. That's how bad Manchester United were last night. That's how bad that result was last night.
Jack Fletcher, son of Darren. Blimey. Burnley 1, Newcastle 3. Will, you were there. After 10 minutes, you put a message in the group saying, well, this game was decided. But it wasn't totally decided, was it? Like, Newcastle have been really bad away from home. They nearly gave up a 2-goal lead at Burnley. And but for better finishing and but for Nick Pope, perhaps could have come away without a victory.
Yeah, I mean, probably sums up the two teams quite well. That from the Newcastle point of view, they should have been clear, done and dusted. 7 minutes in, and you 2-0 up against, again, the second worst team in the Premier League, which is not what you want for Burnley. And they look really good. I'd watched the Boxing Day game against United, where in the final third, Newcastle were dreadful. Bad decision, poor finishing. Whereas 65 seconds in last night, Gordon got round the back of Walker, perfect cross to Joelinton, goal. And then followed it up with, Visser. And you thought, Burnley can't really score, don't attack. Their previous game against Everton, 16 shots, none on target. So you think, I wrote my match report. I was quite happy. Opened a can, was fine. And then Newcastle are just so brittle. They just invited Burnley onto them. Couldn't control it in midfield. If you think of Tonali, Guimaraes, and Joelinton in there, they sort of get a lot of praise. But last night, just running through them. Marcus Edwards was really good. Looked lively. He's that was his second start in a row, and looks promising that he could create, but. Unfortunately for Burnley, they don't have a decent striker. In the final third, they're pretty inept, and that's it. Honestly, they're really good until it came to the key moments, and that's where they'll fall apart. And I think they're looking for a striker in January. Parker talks a lot about fight, spirit, all these things, but quality is actually quite important in the Premier League.
So Lyle Foster's at Afcon, isn't he? Yeah.
I mean, I won't worry about that.
Yeah.
Al Foster's not a good enough Premier League player. Simple as that. We can be polite about it, but he's not. Brozier, 20 million quid in the summer. He's been injured a lot. His goal against Bournemouth was his first in 40 Premier League games. That's not going to keep you up, obviously. Jan Fleming is a good championship striker. Oh, well, not even a striker. Good championship player, sort of number 10 winger. And that's it. It goes back to recruitment that they didn't find the right striker in the summer. The defence is all right. They've had a few problems with injuries. Estev had to go off last night. Missing Twanzebe, he's at Afcon. Left back's been a bit of an issue. Hartman looked really good at the start of the season, and he's fallen away. Parker was saying last night they've given him time away from the team to try and recover. He's been linked with a move to Ajax. And it's a shame for Burnley, but I mean, there was it's 2-0 down. There was apathy within the team and within the fans, and it was pretty quiet at Turf Moor, but it's something to build on. they're not going to get out of it, in my opinion. But it was having discussed the United game. They've got United on Wednesday. If they play like that at Turf Moor against United, I mean, they've got a good chance of winning.
Yeah.
And I think if you are in the Premier League and you are going to go down, give your fans a few nights to remember. And yeah, that's what you've got to hold on to, because I can't see them sign the players that'll turn it around in January. Josh Cullen, the captain's done his ACL. He's gone for the season. So
yeah, and that's a big blow, actually, isn't
you...
it? I look. I mean, I'm all here for defiant Scott Parker. I really like hearing sort of browbeaten, but we've shown fight from him. I could listen to these interviews on Luke. I thought Newcastle were really lucky for that second goal wasn't disallowed for that shove by Guimaraes. Well, that seemed so obvious to me, but I mean, if I'm the only one, then I will happily withdraw this accusation.
Yeah, he pushes him over the keeper, doesn't he? Like, kind of shoves him. Yeah, it's a pretty big
foul.
shove. I don't know. It felt to me like you could disallow a goal for that. Yeah,
I'm disallowing it. Forest 0, Everton 2. Everton up to 8. Good win for them at the City Ground. They haven't scored in their previous 3. Got a lot of players out injured. A few at Afcon as well. And James Garner's the hero of this game, Paul, isn't he? Lovely finish for the goal. Beautiful setup for Tiano Barry for the second.
Yeah, I almost think the second goal is better from Garner's perspective than the first, because he does that incredible turn, just like one of those little bits of skill on the halfway line, and then that pass to pick out Barry. And you almost just, of all the people to get that ball, Tiano Barry just being served a brilliant ball that he has to finish. Fair play to him for putting that away, because I don't think I would have bet on him in that situation, to be honest. I felt really happy for both of them. For Garner deserved that. He was brilliant, but I also felt the relief when Barry scored that goal, just from his perspective, because, you know, he has struggled, and he's not the person you necessarily want on the end of a through ball, has to score to save your life. You wouldn't necessarily put Tiano Barry in your... I'd probably rather have myself there than him a lot of the time.
I didn't realise that saved your life, Paul. There was more jeopardy on this game. I'd have put that in the WhatsApp group.
Did I not lead with that, Max? Oh, I thought that everyone knew about that. Yeah.
You drew it out of a hat and it said Tiano Barry. You're like, oh, mate. Okay, get my affairs in order.
Explain that to my wife, though. I thought he was due. Like, he's due a goal. He's a decent finisher.
I think even James Garner
wasn't starting.
Yeah, you're right. You'd hope Impact sub works, wouldn't you? I think even James Garner was like, yeah, after I played the pass, I was just praying he scored. He didn't say, he didn't sound like he was certain. But yeah, look, it's a good win for Everton. Yeah, big win for them. And Forest, after, I think they hammered Spurs, didn't they? Where Spurs were absolutely hopeless. They've lost a few in a row. And so, like, those big games at the bottom next week are fascinating. Just before we end part 2, Brennan Johnson set to decide whether he wants to go to Palace. They've agreed a $35 million deal to sign him from Spurs. He scored the winner in the Europa League final. So we'll see what he decides. We can discuss that a bit on Friday's pod, where both Palace and Tottenham are playing. Wilfred Nancy watch, fresh from 67hailhail.com, running the headline. Max Rushton admits he would love to see Celtic win the league as he bats for Wilfred Nancy, with a photo of me playing golf, I think, at the British Masters Pro-Am in about 2010. And
could have done with a photo of you with a bat rather than a club.
Yeah,
with that headline, that would have been more appropriate.
I don't know if there are many on Getty Images, but anyway, it must have been a very slow news
AI
day.
Must get AI to sort it. Come on, lads.
Surely AI, I think, has better things to do than put a picture of me with a cricket bat. Anyway, Celtic promptly lost 2-0 at Motherwell. Bit of a rick from Cash Bush-Michael for the second. So... you say things like this, but I don't actually. When you look at it in a headline, you think it's a ridiculous thing. I don't really care. So maybe they can do another headline now. A vout fast from Max saying that he actually doesn't care after defeat to Motherwell. What a fair weather Celtic follower I am. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly, nearing the end of the group stages of Afcon. Paul, Benin, Senegal was your main screen last night. Looked very comfortable for Senegal from what I saw.
Yeah, it mostly was. Ever so slightly overshadowed for them by Koulibaly being given a red card, which is in his 100th game for his nation. So he celebrated that with a straight red, which will rule him out of the next round. It's really weird. AFCON's really weird in this way, because this thing of going from 24 teams down to 16 means that almost everyone seems to qualify.
Yeah, there's not a lot of jeopardy,
drama
is there?
Yeah, suddenly, sometimes there feels like a lot of jeopardy, and then it dissipates quite quickly. But yeah, Senegal are running nicely. It's, Morocco are obviously the team to beat, and Morocco are in this fascinating situation that they're actually getting quite a lot of stick in Morocco, or certainly the coaches. This is a really weird kind of side note to the tournament. Is Morocco obviously came into the tournament massive favourites at home, longest ever winning run in international football behind them. Their heroics at 2022 World Cup. There's a huge expectation they can win this. But it's to the extent where the coach, Walid Regragui, was booed when his name was read out before their game against Zambia, because fans feel already that the team is not playing the way they should be at this tournament. I think part of the reason for that is, so at 2022 in Qatar, what they excelled at was effectively sitting deep and hitting teams on the break, hitting much bigger, technically bigger footballing nations, pulling off the surprise. What they found much, much harder is being the team that's been on the front foot. And the kind of football that fans are expecting of them in Morocco is attacking flair. When you look at some of the players they've got an incredible squad. They're expecting that team to really spark and to play this beautiful attacking football. And they've not massively done that. They haven't looked brilliant in periods this tournament. So it's quite interesting that already there's an atmosphere where the coach could well, I don't think they'll sack him if they don't win Afcon necessarily, but it's, for example, if they didn't get to the final at least, I think they might, and there's a real sense of discontent, and I think that is quite weird feeling at a tournament. It feels like there should be this whole sense of the nation being excited and jubilant, but it's not really been like that with Morocco, and I think that's been a fascinating sort of dynamic with this tournament. Added to the bad weather as well, it feels a very unusual Afcon vibe, like that kind of rainy days and slightly miserable fans is not what we expect from Afcon, is it really?
No, not at all. But they've won their group already with 2 wins and a draw in Group A. And Al-Kabi, who we talked about scoring a brilliant overhead kick in, I think, the first game, scored another one. And he does have a YouTube reel of overhead kicks. We were saying before the pod, it's amazing that that's his Cruyff turn. He just keeps scoring overhead kicks. If he didn't score it, you'd be surprised. It's that kind of level now.
Yeah, doing his own goal of the tournament basically on his own. But also it's funny because, again, even with him, there is debate about how much he actually adds to the team, outside of these incredible goals. I know it sounds silly, but he's
just an overhead kick merchant.
All he'll do is score a beautiful overhead kick. But I don't know. It is interesting how a few of the teams at Afcon have got these kind of players where you look at them and in theory, these should be their sort of gold-plated shining stars. But actually, there's always this debate about whether those players are slightly holding back the unit. So yeah, it's weird. You look at Morocco's situation, you'd think they would be absolutely over the moon right now, especially lining up their next round clash. That you think, God, they're surely going to get through that. And instead, they're kind of nervy. They're so nervy. I feel nervous watching it, and I've not got any investment in it.
3 wins from 3 from Nigeria. Chukwueze, who's looked really good for Fulham recently, he looked very impressive in that win against Uganda.
Yeah, and I think Nigeria is a funny one because Nigeria are so often held back by their own internal politics. And obviously there was a huge... The failure to qualify for the World Cup, that was a massive, massive moment for Nigeria. And the fallout from that was pretty intense. So there's a feeling they've got to deliver at Afcon to kind of get rid of that kind of to kind of lance the boil of failing to qualify for the World Cup. I think, this is the fascinating thing with Afcon. You've got a really rare situation that you've got a very clear outright favourite in Morocco, but below them there's a whole cast of teams, all of which you could quite comfortably sort of say have a decent chance. And I think Senegal probably maybe narrow second favourites, but then in there you got Egypt, you've got Algeria. It's going to be a really fascinating tournament now. And I think, as I say, because the first stage does feel a little bit sluggish because you're not knocking out very many teams, this now moving into the knockout is going to be fascinating because you've already got Algeria against DR Congo you could well, I mean, it looks like you'll have South Africa against Ivory Coast or Cameroon, and you're suddenly looking at these big games, Mali versus Tunisia. It's a real switch of pace suddenly that you're looking at massive knockout clashes between some really, really good teams.
I watched the Congo goals, and it wasn't an overhead kick, but that goal from, was it Nathaniel Mbuku? Brilliant back heel from Chelsea, Fulham, Bolton's Gael Kakuta. I thought it was such a nice goal.
Yeah, that was that was one of the best assists I've seen in a long time, wasn't it? Yeah. No, Congo, there was a period where Congo seemed like they were trying to rack up as many goals as they could to try and depose Senegal, but Senegal just really had to just not do
Yes, sorry, that's done, isn't it? 3 games is how many games you play. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, no, that one's done. And Senegal had quite an easy game.
It's like I'd never watched a tournament before. 3 games in a group.
They just keep playing.
Yeah.
Max, when they get to the 7 games point, that's when you start to really
they play themselves, don't they? They haven't played themselves yet.
Max even into the knowledge this week will be fun. He's got a lot of questions. Why did he only play 3 games in the group? What's that about?
Listen, has a Martin assisted a Martin is a good question. Well, how many games do you play in a 4-team group at a major tournament? Not a good question. I understand that. Look, we all make mistakes. South Africa beat Zimbabwe 3-2. I just wondered, how big a rivalry is that in African football?
Yeah, it's very big. That was a fascinating game. I mean, South Africa. Really, with the talent they've got in that side, South Africa really should have been getting through a lot easier than they did, and they really flirted with losing that game. They maybe deserved to lose that game, and that would have been. I think it would have been a huge kind of loss of face for South Africa, more than Zimbabwe would have been over the moon, obviously. But I think coming into the tournament, nobody thought that could happen, that South Africa could be beaten by Zimbabwe. So yeah. South Africa kind of I had them as a dark horse before the tournament, South Africa, but I think that's been slightly upset by the fact that now, if they take on Ivory Coast or Cameroon looked like they were coming into the tournament in absolute disarray. They had this crazy situation where they had 2 coaches who both picked a squad each, which was amazing. Yeah, it was a case of which Cameroon will turn up, but quite literally, because they have the Football Federation and the Sports Ministry. The Sports Ministry appointed their coach. The Football Federation, Samuel Eto'o's Football Federation, basically rejected this coach, Mark Brees, but Brees stayed and just carried on doing the job, while the Federation just desperately tried to get rid of him at every turn. Then when Eto'o tried to sack him, so the Federation said, you're gone, the coach was like, well, no, I'm not, because I was appointed by the Sports Ministry, not the Federation. And so he kept trying to pick a squad, while Eto'o brought in another manager, David Pagu, who is actually at the tournament, who picked his own squad. So for a little while, it did look like there were going to be 2 Cameroon squads. So Cameroon could not have been in worse shape in terms of the organisation of the team, but actually have looked really decent at this tournament. It's almost like maybe the weight of expectations fallen away. They're definitely not amongst the favourites. And yeah, I actually think if it is South Africa, Cameroon, that could be a chance for Cameroon to really upset them.
Tanzania have qualified for the knockout stage for the first time. First team ever to do it with 2 points. Got a couple of players from the diaspora, Tarin Alarakia and Haji Noga. The former plays for Rochdale, latter plays for Salford. It just sort of shows that you've got a National League and League 2 players getting through in a major tournament, shows where they are as a team, I guess, that these are key players. They've got Samata, who's played for Villa, as their main man. But yeah, just a really impressive performance from them. 2 draws, only lost 2-1 to Nigeria, and they've got Morocco in the next round, so that'll be fine.
And actually their goal's a guy called Faye Toto, who also played for Zanzibar, and I got worms in Zanzibar, and they were all in my feet. So when I got back to the UK, I had worm trails all up my feet, and it was such an impressive array of worms that when I was in the hospital, the doctor called all the junior doctors to look at my wormy feet. That I had got from the sand. But we buried one of my mates in the sand, and he had worms all over himself.
Phew. God, he's all right, though. For a minute, I thought that was getting a lot darker there. When
No.
He was relying on Turner Barry scoring a goal.
he was.
No, he's not scored, mate. Sorry.
What I would do now just to have a few nights on a beach hut in Zanzibar, though. Finally, Nigel says, did Charlton never lose at Fratton Park? Glenn is we never lose at Fratton Park a contender for the greatest ever chant at a football match just for the wrong reasons. So this is an amazing... we had a nice email from Jamie Atton as well. Says, hi, Max Barry and the gang. First time writer, long time listener. My interest was piqued when you mentioned my beloved Portsmouth, not once, but twice, during the Christmas special on the 17th of December, recorded on the 17th. The idea that Pompey are the only club not allowed to celebrate a goal sounds far-fetched. Although this season it feels largely unnecessary. The lack of goals has already taken care of that. In fact, your tongue-in-cheek remark of how now feels suspiciously accurate. I'm beginning to wonder if that's exactly why Pompey aren't putting the ball in the net. Here's hoping 2026 is a year full of goals from the boys in blue. Keep up the great work. Well, Jamie would have loved Monday night. Portsmouth 2, Charlton 1. Charlton equalised in the 97th minute, former Cambridge striker Harvey Nibbs. And you would have seen, if you haven't seen it, it sort of sums up being a football fan. Like no one can write an article or do a TV show or anything that sums up being a football fan better than people filming in that end. We never lose at Fratton Park. I didn't know they hadn't lost for 20 years. It's not a stat that interests me. They're all singing, we never lose at Fratton Park. You know the thing, we never lose at Fratton Park. And the Portsmouth fans in that corner are so furious. And that, as that chant just sort of ends, it naturally comes to an end, there's this moment of silence. And then Yang Min Hyuk, who is on loan from Spurs, puts it in the corner for Portsmouth. I don't know, Paul. It feels so beautiful. Like the timing is unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. It almost feels like if you were to script it, you couldn't do better than that, could you? It's tempting fate demonstrated, isn't it? Basically,
yeah. But even 97th minute, you think we're probably all right. Like, when can you gloat as a football fan? I always think you've got to wait for the final. Me and my dad, if Tottenham are ever 3-0 up, which they never are, and it's the 92nd minute, we're like, still need another one. And it's that kind of thing. There is an amazing... Also, suddenly this footage came out from the Portsmouth end of just someone going, just as Yang sort of takes the ball, he just goes, fucking shoot! And then he shoots and it goes in the corner. It's like, this is amazing. I loved it so much. Thank you so much for making that happen, everyone that was involved. Those sort of fans who do their own YouTube channels, who sort of film themselves watching the whole game. And I guess it's a performative element, but because it's just so real, one of them just sort of laughs in this way where you just know, and the people around him are just like, yeah, this is what it is. I don't know why we do this to ourselves, but we all do. So thank you for delivering the best moment of the year this close to the end of the year.